The Source One V5 just isn't that heavy. Frame itself is pretty solid. You know, the arms are not flippity floppity and there's less like drop off of power. I didn't feel much difference in terms of flight feel versus something like the Apex. I fly a clone, but I would still say that this match is competitive, especially for its price range. And I think it's pretty solid. I also crashed at a Bando a couple of days back, and the arms was the one that took the bulk of the hit, and it's still standing. There's a little bit of a scratch mark, but it's doing great. So I think it's an excellent frame that should definitely be considered.
Hi, Tan here. So what you just saw was after flying a pack of my new Source One V5 frame, it's a raw post-flight clarity kind of review of the frame. So let's get a bit more into details. The fact that it's 6mm arms, that contributes to the fact that there's less vibration during flights. The fact that I can buy it for 130 ringgit plus. The weight of the frame being 120 grams is a bit mid. This quad might actually weigh more than the Apex, but honestly, I'm gonna stand on my opinion that the value for money is definitely there. There's a slim center over here, meaning that if I were to strike a pole on the side here, it's gonna be a direct hit on my ESC. So I definitely see that as a con. And the other thing is, if I'm gonna compare it against the Source One version 4, the lesser workspace that you have in terms of the width of the frame overall. And that's just my general thoughts of the frame. So coming up, I'll be talking more in detail in terms of comparing it with other frames or other details that I think you should know. Feel free to skip to any of the timestamps listed over here, or just continue watching and enjoy the rest of the video. So the Team Black Sheep Source One V5, it comes with the standard 4 pieces of arms. For the bottom bay, it's actually a split deck design. So the bottom plate has 2 pieces of carbon fiber, while over this side we have the top plate, the 3M stickered battery pad, a middle wedge that holds the arms in place, the camera carbon fiber, a bag of screws, and a bag of standoffs. So your mounting options for this frame is either 30x30 or 20x20. So getting into the build, this is what we want to get from the bottom part of the frame. The bottom front plate should be all the way down there, while on the top of it is the middle wedge and the 4 arms being accepted there. So we start the assembly with the 14mm screw through the bottom plate and the mounting option that you are not using. So you can see I'm mounting on the 20x20 as the support mount. So this leaves the 30x30 mounting holes available for me to put in my stack screws later. So as I push the screw through the bottom plate and through the arm, it will meet my upper plate with the nut. And now don't forget to put the arm wedge in there. And now just apply this to the other arms as well. So next I'm going to be putting a 30mm stack metal screw through the 30x30 holes, and this is basically where my stack goes through. These screws are not provided by TBS in this kit, so just find your own. And the next step is to put in the standoffs. So with the standoffs you get 8 in total. You get 4 pieces that is 22mm and 4 pieces that is 30mm. So go ahead and screw in the shorter standoffs to the back of the frame, and towards the front screw in the taller ones. So what you get is the top plate of the frame would just sit leveled. Now the first obvious difference is that the Source One version 4 uses a single bottom plate, and that means that all the standoffs are at the same height. And that's just me pointing out the difference. I don't think there's any advantages or disadvantages of a split deck versus single stack on the bottom. But besides that, the thing that makes the biggest difference, I believe, between the Source One V4 versus the Source One V5 is the arm thickness. To the left is your Source One V5 arm, and to your right is the Source One V4 arm. Look at that difference. This is 4mm while this is 6mm. And in terms of rigidity, you can actually flex the Source One version 4, the older version, a little bit, While for the Source One version 5, it feels like impossible to flex, and there's a rigidity to it which really contributes to helping the flight performance. And I think it's actually the biggest upgrade that the Source One version 5 has. It is the fact that the rigidity of the arms would actually contribute to less vibrations in the air. While if you have a bit of a flex arms, I don't think it does the flight performance any good. Most of the time I feel it manifests as prop wash, where your quad will just go down and wobble a little bit as it's recovering. Let's compare the weight. The Source One version 4 is coming at 111 grams, while the Source One version 5 is coming at 120 grams. 10 grams for this thick arms, which is a major upgrade. I think it's a small cost. Let's talk about the 3D print parts. So nothing of the Source One version 4 is going to fit into the Source One version 5. For example, this GoPro mount, which is intended for the Source One version 4, will not be supported by the Source One version 5. Just quickly browsing through Thingiverse, at the moment I don't see much listings for the Source One V5 frame on Thingiverse, but I definitely think over time more parts would come out as more people would be building this frame. But the tip I can give to you is that the arms are the same. So these bumper arms were actually modified from the Source One version 4. In terms of the design of it is the same. All I actually did was I increased the height to 6mm in a mesh mixer, and it's kind of worked out very well for me. And yeah, another tip I could give to you is that the QAVS actually has the same back standoff dimensions as the Source One V5, meaning that if you would take the same models for the QAVS for a back crossfire mount, or in my case is the back tracer mount, it would actually measure in correctly. So let's talk about the electronics on this thing. It accepts any regular 2207, 2306 motors. The bottom side has cable tie holes cut out for a crossfire. The 30x30 stack is my actually only complaint. The fact that the base of it is not covering entirely. You know, the direct opposite of that is the QAVS. The 30x30 stack is so protected here. Any strikes that come from the side here is not gonna compromise my ESC in any way. Although looking at it now, you won't run into that problem if you're using a 20x20 stack, so you could consider that. So let's take a look at the back mounting options. So both the Source One version 4 and the Source One version 5 are using 20x20 stacks. But the difference is actually the size of the hole. If we look at the Source One version 4 20x20 stack, it used to run holes that have clearance for an M3 screw tightly fitted in. What this means is that M2 screws could also go through and the button head could still sit there, having the M2 screws a bit loose, but at least once you fasten it, it should hold in place. While this is not the same case for the Source One version 5, where I believe is an M3.5 screw, so it's no problem actually putting in an M3 metal screw over here. But if you try to put an M2 screw through here, it's going to just basically go through the whole thing. But if you're looking to run an air unit Lite on this, and for the Source One V5, it's no problem at all to use your cable ties to mount it to this thing. And finally, the odd one out, the large air unit. Now the Source One V4 was also known as the Source One HD. And that came out in the era where before the Vista came out. So when you place the air unit in the Source One V4, it sits so comfortably. While for the Source One V5, you can't actually fit it in. Now they did say on the live stream that you could take off these two standoffs over here to make space for the air unit. And yes is yes, but it doesn't comfortably or reliably sit there, and the only way to get it on is probably with tape or something flimsy. I don't advocate for putting the air unit on this one. I think a DJI Air Unit Lite would work perfectly fine with this build. I hope I've covered all the things that you might have questions for, and thank you for watching.